For today's lesson, we are going to start and introduce the main concept of object-oriented programming. It's about classes and objects. Can you see my screen? Yes.
Yes.
When we had the introduction of object-oriented programming, we already have introduced these two concepts, the concept of objects and classes. Objects are the main focus when you are doing object-oriented programming. First and foremost, if you are to design programs in object-oriented programming such as Java, you are to consider determining or creating first your objects. Now, how do you create objects? You are going to create objects through the use of classes, which we are going to learn for today. So having that said, or on that introduction, you can always go back to that first presentation when we had object-oriented programming introduced. All of these concepts were introduced already on that first presentation before even we had started with practical or programming. Okay. Now, what are objects? Object-oriented programming actually works with modeling on real-world objects. Now, objects are everywhere. Considering these given objects here, if you take a look at around you, everything is considered to be objects. So if you are to do programming and you are going to create something for the school or for the college, you will have to determine those objects related to the program or to the problem you are solving. For instance, I'm going to create a program in which we are to calculate the salary of the employee. First object which you may determine related to that salary calculation of the employee is, of course, the employee. Okay, now that's just one of the example. But looking at these photos here, even physical objects are considered to be objects. Now, objects can be either physical or logical. On this given example, let's say, if you are to create a library system, you can determine that books are part or are examples of objects. So to just summarize what this page is saying, it means that if we are to apply object-oriented programming, we focus on looking at real-world objects related to the problem which we are solving. So moving on, as I've said, objects can be living or non-living. What do we mean by living? Living are those which are having life, like us. Okay, like you, student. Can you be a particular object later on for some programming problems? Of course, if you are to create, let's say, registration system, who is the main person involved in there? You are a living thing which is involved in registration system. Your advisor also. It can be some animals or anything that is living in this world. You can also consider non-living things to be objects such as chairs, tables, or related to the same example I have given, if say you would like to create a registration system for a particular course, a room, okay? A room can be an example of, your room number can be an example of non-living object, okay? Aside from the fact that objects can be living or non-living, objects can also be physical or abstract, physical or logical, okay? Conceptual. You can have this also, you can call this also as logical. Now, what are example of physical object? The same thing as we have given in the living. Mostly, the living and non-living are your physical objects, such as, let's say, a physical object can be the room number, can be the student, can be the employee, can be books, can be television, or anything that you can physically touch, anything that is concrete and anything which you can actually touch. Or objects can also be logical or conceptual. What are examples of logical and conceptual? Account number, bank account number. The courses. Can you touch your courses? No, of course not. Courses are examples of logical or non-physical objects because you have this considering, let's say, registration system. This is always involved as an object in registration system, but you can never ever touch or see this unless you are going to use a physical object. Let's say you want to see the courses. Can you touch the courses? No, you can only see and touch the courses when it's physically printed in a paper. Okay, so again, these two are some concepts of objects. Objects can be living or non-living. Objects can be physical or conceptual. Now, aside from that, objects will have two features. Okay, what are these two features we consider to have with our objects? Objects can have their own attributes or and it's it's not or, it's and. They will have their own actions. What do we mean by attributes? Attributes are actually the description. Okay, for example, the description which I can give for this particular person, let's say this person is an employee. This person may be having the height of 5 foot and 2 inches. Okay, this person may have a nationality of Omani, or maybe this person is a Filipino. Okay, now attributes are those which will directly describe these objects you would like to handle. So again, attributes can be the description of the objects you are handling. How about actions? Okay, from the term itself, actions are actually what you can do with that attribute or what you can do with that object. Okay, is that person can register a course. Let's say this person is a student. Okay, let's say this person is a student. Is this student can register a course? Yes. This student can add and drop a course? Yes. Is this student can choose section? This student can print timetable and so on. So actions are actually the methods. Actions are the methods or the tasks you can do with your objects. So again, what are actions? Actions are actually your methods. This attribute are descriptions, or we can also say that these descriptions are considered to be your data. Let's say the account number or what are datas you can put in this person. Let's say the height, the ID number, what's the name of this person. Any data pertaining to this object will be considered as the object's attribute. Any action or any method, okay, anything, any task which you can perform with this object can be called as the actions. Okay, so again, every object will have these two features. Every object will have their own data and methods or their attributes and actions. You may call them differently. Okay, you may call them in different terms also, but what we are actually telling is that every object will have their own data, okay, and every object will have their own methods to execute or to do. They can do so many things and they can be described using these attributes or the data. So that is about object. Okay, any question? Understand what objects are? Any question, class? Any question about objects?
No. Okay, sure.
No. Okay, I think it's very clear. Let's move on. Okay. For example, okay, there are other examples here. If your object is the car, okay, can we consider car as an object? Yes, of course. What data you can have as attribute for the car? A car will have its own brand name. A car can have a color. A car can have a plate number. A car can have year. A car can have the amount or the price, and so on. Okay, now what are the actions this car can do? This car can run, this car can be having a brake, this I can buy this car, I can take a loan using this car, and so on. Okay, so let's have another example considering the object employee, the same example as I have given a while ago. What are data or attributes you can use to describe the employee? You may have an employee number. Yeah? Can I use employee number to describe this employee? Yes. If I say 306028, that is my employee ID. That is my staff ID. Meaning, if I'm going to use that ID, I am referring to myself because that's my own attribute. Okay? I can describe myself as having that employee ID 306028. Do I have a name? Okay, is department can be considered as attribute or data for the employee? Yes, all of the employees can belong to a department. And each employee can receive or will receive a salary. Okay, now what are the actions or procedures or tasks or methods you can have for employees? For the employee object, you can assign employee ID. Let's say there's a new employee coming up, you can assign their own employee ID. With this salary you have in your attribute, you can calculate that. Okay, and you can input and output the data of the employee. Okay, what do you notice about the attributes and the action class? Attributes are actually noun. Do you know noun? Attributes, as you can see, they are nouns. Okay, nouns. What are nouns? You can research, huh? Nouns, this is one of the English form. This is letter M. Nouns are any name of a person, place, or thing. Anything? Anything which is the name of a person, place, or thing, and so on. These are nouns. What about the actions? The actions are actually verbs. Do you know what verbs are? Do you know what verbs are? Verbs are action words. Okay, this you have learned in your English. Okay, so again, attributes are descriptions, so they can be nouns. Okay, they are data, any name of a person, place, or thing. Okay, these are all things. All of these are describing one particular person. Even object is a noun. Okay, you can see that object is also a noun. Attributes can also be a noun because it's describing the object. What about actions? Actions are verbs. What are verbs? Verbs are action words. Run, write, execute, delete, add, okay, register, calculate, assign, input, output. Are those actions? Yes. And in English, we call them verbs. Okay. Again, attributes. If you want to consider what attributes are, if you want to determine what are the attributes, you think of some nouns. If you want to determine or write the actions for this particular object, then you think of action words or verbs such as this one: assign, calculate, input, and output. Okay? Any question on these two examples? Still clear? Question, class?
No, teacher.
Okay, again, attributes in Java are called fields and actions are called methods. Fields or data. Okay, these are actually the data. Where do we save the data? Data are just saved in variables, no? Okay, So again, these are fields or data, or these are actually your variables, okay? The simplest word which I can use to describe it, which you are all familiar, is they are your variables. Okay, again, in Java, when we say attributes, these are your variables. As simple as that. You can also call them as fields or data. For the actions, your actions are called the methods, or sometimes you can also call it as tasks. These are the tasks which you can do with these objects, okay? These are the tasks what you can do with these objects, okay? We are still talking about objects. So each and every object you are going to write, you will have to declare the variables involving that object, and you will have to declare also all the methods which are involved in that object, okay, depending on what program you are solving. In some other language, methods are called functions, and fields are called variables, okay? You leave this one. These are just extra definition. Okay, let's move on. In Java, how do we create objects? Okay, we create objects in Java using a class. So you have already started creating a class. Have you? Have you created already a class before? Inside that, you have your main program, yeah? Yeah, you still remember? So if you are to create a program in Java, they are all saved in one class. So you already had an example of objects. Have you created object there? Not yet particularly. But I'd like to tell you that you are or you can create objects in Java using a class. So Java objects are created using what? Using class declaration. A Java class is actually a template or blueprint for you to be able to create an object. I hope you remember that. So if I say create an object or declare the object, then the main object abstraction or declaration will be done using a Java class. Okay, we will do this in our practical later. So in the meantime, let's just take this statement that if I would like to declare all the attributes or variables and methods of my objects, where will I declare all of those? We can declare all of those using a Java class. All right. So when you create a class in Java, you are doing abstraction, okay? It's just like you are representing all of those which you would like to include in your objects in the class which you will create in the Java class. So you are having an abstraction, and when you do the abstraction, you are to write them all in Java class. Now, the objects itself will be the real values, okay? How is that? I will tell you more about this in our practical. Okay, examples of classes and object is, let's say, the class which I will write is a student, okay? Okay, so if I am going to do the abstraction for my student class, I will have inside this student class all the attributes, okay? So all the fields or attributes I can have. Okay, where will I declare all the attributes? All the attributes or data you need for this student will be declared in this class. So what will I declare here inside this class student? I will declare all the attributes and all the methods I will need for my student class. Of course, it must be related to the problem you are solving. So what do I got? I got here the attributes and the methods I need for my student class. So when I do the abstraction for my student class, I will include all of these declarations. Declarations of the attribute and declarations of the method. Now, what about the real objects now? The real objects now can be represented with the real student. Who are the real student? So inside class student, I will now have my real data or my real student, which can be, okay, let's say I'm representing which object. I will now have Asa as my real object. Who is going to have the second value? I will have Muna. Let's say I will also include Saina to be the object for my student class. And I will have Abdullah and so on and so forth. You remember one of the advantage of using object-oriented programming is that you can reuse the code. So in this case, I can reuse my class declaration of student with my 4 objects. How many objects I can use here or I can represent here using my student class or class student? I can have Asa 1. I can have Muna 2. I can have Zaina 3. I can have Abdullah 4. I can have Fatma 5. I can have Abdul Manam 6, and so on. I can reuse this student class for me to be able to represent other objects or other values. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. These are all theory. You will understand it better if we are already in practical. Name some objects from your college of class teacher. Okay, what of if we are, let's say, if we have declared class teacher, who are the real objects here? Can you name some? Okay, so you will have teacher Ruby. Yeah, you may have teacher Tari. You can have other teachers, teacher Ramkumar, teacher K. Kumar, teacher Malika, teacher Jaysri, and so on. So who are the real objects here? If your class is teacher, this can be the main object or the real objects, okay? Exercise from the paragraph below. Okay, I'll give you this as take-home exercise later on. Let's just continue with some more theory. Could you identify the classes and objects? Okay, I will give you this as your homework. Okay, I will give this to you later on. Okay, now how do we create classes in Java? As we said, we can now declare all the attributes and all the components of your object inside your class. Now, how do we declare now a class? How do we create a class? A class declaration must start with the keyword class followed by the class name. Okay? It will also have its body, okay, which is enclosed in braces. Where is our, okay, let me just try to show you that again. Let me just try to show you that. So we have the keyword class. Where is that? Here's the keyword class. Okay, so this is the general syntax of declaring or writing a class. Again, so you will start with the keyword class followed by the class name. Where is the class name? The class name is here. Okay, and it says you must have the class body, and the body must be enclosed with curly braces. Okay, now the class body is where you declare your variables and methods, or your fields and your methods. All right, so again, you have here your general syntax of declaring a class. You have the keyword class followed by the class name, and then you have the body of the class, which is enclosed in curly braces, and inside the body of the class is where you declare your attributes and your actions, or your methods and fields, variables and methods. All right, I hope that's understood. We are going to apply that. If you are giving class name, okay, just a reminder, if you are giving a class name, each of the first letter must be capitalized, like this one. See, capital S for the student, capital R, rectangle, circle, rectangle rate calculator, temperature, employee. Let's say employee. So in the naming convention, I hope you can follow this. If you are going to give class name of class, it should always be starting with capital letter, like this one, capital S, big letter C, capital R, and capital T, and so on. If it's two words like this one, look at this, the second word, it will not have any space, okay? So it still be capital letter. Okay, this is for the class name. Okay, what about the method name? The method name is same as the convention of variable name. Okay, method name and field name can be written like this one. It can start with small letter. Okay, like let's say employee ID or ID. If you say ID only, then it's just ID in small letter, like this one, ID. Okay, all small letter. But if you want it in two word, like let's say emp, okay, like if you want emp ID, then it can be all small letter first and then followed by like this one, no? Capital letter I and then D. Okay, this is how you name your field and your method. Now, I hope you will follow these naming conventions. Okay, let's start creating a class. Now, I don't want to show this. I want to show it in practical instead, but it will look like this one. Okay, so let me just go to the practical. I think you can understand it better if we will write this class in practical. Okay, any questions so far? So let's try what we have just explained in theory using a practical example. So if you have already your computer with you, please start a new file or a new project. Can you still see my screen, class? Yes? Yes. Okay, so let's start a new Java application and then click on next. Okay, so I will have sample OOP. Okay, so I will just have sample object-oriented program 1. So let me have that as my project name. No. Again. Okay, new project. I will have why it's going there. Go there, Java application, click next. I will have sample OOP1. So this is going to be your first example of object-oriented program. Okay, can you see that? So I will have now my package name. So leave that. I will just remove the comments. Are you still there? I hope you are still there. Okay, now you see class. I will leave this because we are not going to use the same thing as this one. Okay, so I will have that one which we have explained a while ago. Let's create a class here. Okay, so let's create a class. Okay, what class are we going to create? We are going to create a class which will represent a student object. Okay, so in our first example, we have told a while ago in one of our example a while ago, we have told about a student. Now, aside from that, we have also given the syntax of how you create a class. Now, what we are going to do now is to apply what we have just shown in the theory. Okay, let's have this as our reference. How do we create? Okay, how do we create a class? We are going to create a class or declare a class using this general syntax. Can you see this? Okay, now what first example we are going to use? Let's try to use class student, okay, which you are all familiar. If I am to create a student class, okay, and I would like to calculate the marks of the student, okay, how will I declare that? So first, I'm going to use a class declaration for me to declare this class, yeah? So let's go and declare this class. Okay, what's the syntax of declaring the class? First, you start with the keyword class, followed by the class name. Okay, what is the rule in naming a class? We have said a while ago that if you are to create a class name, it should be in capital letter. So, did we start with capital letter? Yes, we are now starting with capital letter. So, let's have now our body. Our body is enclosed with begin and end. Can you see that? Okay. Now, what comes next? After you declare a class, you are going to declare the attributes or fields. Let's call it as fields. What are fields? These are actually your variables. Okay. What class we are going to create? We are going to create a class to calculate. So let's create a class to calculate total marks of the student. Of student. So, if you are to calculate total mark of a student, can I also use marks here? Let's say my class name is marks. Can I also use that? You think I can also use the class name marks? Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Because, yeah, it's related to the problem you are solving. Or, let's just consider or continue with student. Okay, so we have class followed by space followed by the class name. So what is my class name now here? My class name is student. All right. Now, inside, as we said, each and every class declaration where you are going to do abstraction for the student, you will need to declare the data or the fields. And you will also need to declare the methods, or these are actually the tasks you would like this object to do later on, or this class to do later on. Okay, now let me just remind you that what we are calculating is the total mark. Now, what do you think are the fields or attributes I can assign to this student? Can I have student ID? Is a student ID part of student variable? Do you think it's necessary to have the student ID when you calculate your total marks? It's a student
Yes.
ID included. Yes.
Yes.
What else? Can you give another one related to the problem? How about name, string name? Okay, so let me have student name. Is that also related? Definitely, no? Okay, so we have now the student ID and the student name. All are just so related with the calculation of the total marks. What else is needed? Of course, the marks, yeah?
Teacher.
Yes, of course. The total marks is we will have to give the marks. Okay, let's say we have completed the marks for the quiz, which you have already finished. Okay, and I may have lab marks. Okay, because you have already done like 3 lab activities. Can we have 2 in the meantime? I will just take 2 in the meantime, huh? Because we have just completed lab activities and quiz. So let me just take these 2 marks which you can now calculate for yourself. Okay? Again, what attributes or fields we have determined to be related in the calculation of the student's total grade or total mark. So I have the student ID, which I think is necessary. I have also the student name so that we know whose marks is this. And then we also have the quiz marks, okay? And then we also have the lab marks. So we have like 2 marks to calculate. All right? Clear on that? So what have we declared first? We have declared the class name. Second step, we have declared the field name or the variable names. All right? Now, let's have our methods. Okay, what do you think is the first method I should do? do I need to assign a value? To assign value for these variables. Now, before I continue with this, let me give you the syntax of how you are going to write a method. So in the meantime, what we had was, we had already our class declaration and our fields or variable declaration. Now we worry about the next section. What is the next section? What methods we are going to declare and how do we declare the methods. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. To write a method, it's similar to the function which you have learned or studied in your C++. Okay, you remember? The first one which you will put is void. Void is a return type. So if you would like to return a value, put the data type of the value you are returning here. But if you are not returning a value, you just put void. The next is the method name. Okay, let's say our first method is to assign value or set the value. Set data. Okay, what do I mean by set data? Set data yani, I will set the values of this. Okay, so I can have set data or set values. Okay, any name you want, but it means that you are assigning the value. You can use also assign value, set value, set data. Okay, so you can have set data now and then begin and end. So what is our syntax of method? First is the return type, followed by the method name, followed by the parenthesis. Okay, because it's a method, later on you might need some parameters here, and then the body of your method. What am I going to do here? I'm going just to set the value. What should be the value I will first set? The first value I will set is the student ID. Okay, let's say 36J123. All right. Okay, next is the student name. Do we need value for the student name? Yes, because we want to know who that name is. Let's say the student name is Zainab Al-Alawi. All right. So we have Zainab Al-Alawi. And then, what else? Do we need value for the quiz mark? Do we need value for the quiz mark? Of course,
Yes.
we need value for the quiz mark. So let's assign, let's say your quiz mark is 4.5. All right. And then we need value also for our, not quiz mark. We will now have our lab mark. Your lab mark, let's say, so far you have completed, I think, 4. Okay, so let's say your mark there is 4. There you have already your first method. Okay. Is this method enough to calculate the total marks? What do you think is still needed? Okay, okay. We are now going to assign the next method. What do you think is the next method? Fatma? What do you think is the next method we have to declare? Method 2? Method 2?
Maybe student 2.
No, just one by one. Okay, method 2, calculate the marks. We can now have method 2, calculate the total marks or get the total marks. Can we calculate now the total marks? Yes, definitely. Why? Because we have already the values of our mark. So how do we calculate the total mark? We will need a new variable. Okay, let's say double total marks is equal to, we will have to add these two, right? How do we calculate the total of these 2 marks? We will just need to do addition. So that's just plus. Got it? Okay, so do we have already the total mark calculation? Yes, okay. What do you think is the next method? What do we need? We have assigned, so this is our input. This is our
Total mark.
process. Okay? What do you think is the next? Display,
Total mark.
no? Total mark, display. So let's now display. All right, so now we have finished with giving the value. Okay, display values. Let me just display values, because there are many values. All right, so how do we display? What do you think are the statements I will put inside to display? I will need system, yeah, dot out, dot print line. So we will now display the first value. What's the first value? If you want to display the student ID, then display the student ID. All right. So let's have plus and then copy this. Following, class? Are you following? Following? Up to here,
Yes,
do you
yes.
follow? Yes. I hope you are also writing in your own NetBeans IDE. So let's have now the student name. Okay, so I'm just displaying. All right, so I have the student name. Okay, now let's display the total marks. Even if you don't display the marks, if marks is asked to be displayed, you display the individual marks. But otherwise, let's just put the total marks so far. So as of this one, right? So we have now our, okay, we have now our fields and we have our methods. How many methods are there? How many methods are there? Again, how many methods are there?
Three.
Three methods.
Mhm.
How many fields? How many fields are there? How many fields?
Three.
Four. Four. There are four fields, four variables. We have the stud ID, we have the student name, we have the quiz mark, and we have the lab mark. Okay? So we have four fields and three methods. What are the method names? Can you tell me what the methods are? The method names are set values. Very good. We have the
Calculate marks.
calculate marks and then
Display value.
display values. Okay, class, look at this. I have red mark here. What do you think is the error? It says cannot find symbol, variable, total marks. Why do you think I have error with my total marks? I have error, no?
Teacher.
Anyone?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, I cannot hear you. But I think you are trying to say that because total mark was declared only inside this calculate mark. Meaning, it is only within this one. Locally, it will allow us to use only inside this begin and end, inside calculate method. So you are using it outside calculate method, it's going to be error. Okay, what you can do is move this up here, although it's not part anymore of our attributes. So move it up here, remove this declaration now. Okay, so now it's global variable. A while ago, when I have declared here, it's a local variable. Okay, so do we still have error? Not anymore. Okay, you see what I have done? Okay, what we have done was, a while ago, we have error here. Yeah, what is the error? Okay, it says that you have to create local variable here. You see, because it is locally declared inside calculate marks. So meaning you can use it only inside calculate marks. So what you can do for you to be allowed to use it anywhere, any part of the program, you have to declare it globally. Declare it outside the method. So you declare it there. So you remove this declaration now. Delete. All right. So now I can use total marks anywhere in my program. I can use it here. I can use it here. I can use it here and anywhere else. Okay. So this is our first abstraction of a Java class. Our first Java class, which we have created to be an object-oriented program, which have fields and methods are written here inside the class declared as student. So this is now your abstraction. How do we declare now the real object, which is sign up? How do we use it now for sign up? We are going to use it inside the main program. So this is just the declaration. Okay? Where can we use it? We can use it inside. If you are going to run it, it will not still display this one. Why? Because we haven't used it yet. It's just a declaration. Okay? Again, this is just the class declaration. So this is your abstraction for the object, your class declaration. Your class declaration, which will have inside, what do you have inside the class? You have the fields and the methods. I'm repetitively saying it so that you become familiar of this, okay? So that's our first part. What is the second part? The second part is how we use this now, okay? For us to use this, let me show you in the theory. How do we control now the class? For us to control the class, we will need to use it or call it inside the main body. Okay? Again, we will have to call it. We will have to call it inside the main body, where we will now declare the real object, who those objects are. Okay? We are going to call also the methods, and we will have this all inside our main program. This class can be outside this one program, or it can be here also. Okay? Now, how do we do that? Let's just have it here. What do we first do? We will now have to create the real object declaration. How do we declare an object now? So this is to declare the object for class student. Okay, how do we declare object for the class student? So to declare object for the class student, you will have the syntax. I will just write the syntax. So you have the class name, okay, followed by object name equal to new class name, parenthesis, semicolon. Do you remember where we have used this? Do you remember using the new operator before? Where did we use new operator? Anyone? Anyone who remembers where we use new operator? We have used it in scanner, no? Yes, very good. Scanner, okay? Now, it's the same thing we are going to apply. What is the class name here? We have declared which class? We have declared student class, yeah? Okay, so just copy that class name. So where do we put that? We put that in the main program. So first is the class name, followed by the object name. Our object name is our real data. Okay? Who is our first object here? Our first object, I think I remember I have declared sign up, I'll allow it. So I can give that as my object name. Because my first object is, who's my first object? My first object is sign up. Okay? Followed by equal, and then new, and then again class name. Just follow the syntax. You put new, and then you have class name again, open and close parentheses. All right. So again, what is this step? This step is creating object for the class we have declared. What's the class we have declared? The class we have declared is student. Who is now our object? Our object, our real value, our real object now is sign up. Okay? Represented inside the class abstraction or the object abstraction, which is inside the class student. Okay? Is that all? Will this run now? Let's see if it's going to run now. I think not yet. Why? Because we haven't executed yet. See? It's running, there's no error, but there's no output either. Okay? Now, how do we call all of these values? How do we run all of the values which we have already declared? So what we will do is we are going to call or call the methods. Okay. How do we call the methods? To call the methods, I will give you the syntax. Object name followed by the method name. And then open and close parenthesis, semicolon. Who is our object? What is our object name? Our object name is Zainab. Yeah? Okay, that. What is our first method name? You see that? It's shown here. Okay, which object name you want? You want to set the values first. Okay? You don't even need to type. Just choose the method name which you want. Semicolon. You remember using this particular syntax? KB dot next in, no? Same thing. Okay, so same syntax as you have used in your next method. Okay, so you're just following that. So let's have again Zainab dot. So we'll have the object name dot method name. Now it's not coming. So let's just put on that so that we can see the other method. What we think is the next one we will call? Of course, we will now have to calculate. Next one. So we'll have again the same object name sign up dot. Okay, the last one. Let's display the values. Semicolon. So that completes now everything you need to run your very first object-oriented program. Now let's see what are the steps we have done. We have first done the class declaration. This is the full class declaration. Okay, so the class will have its own begin and end. And then inside the class, we have the fields, okay, the variables declared, and the methods. Each and every methods you are declaring class have begin and end, huh? So this is begin and end. This has begin and end. This is another set of begin and end. All right? And then after you have declared your class, you are now going to create or write the object. Okay? To create the object, same as scanner. Class name followed by object name equal to new. And then the class name. After you declare the object name, you are now going to call or invoke the method. Call all the methods which you have written. Now let's see if this is going to work. It should display the ID number and then student name, and then it should calculate and display the total marks. What should be our total marks? Our total marks be 9.5. Now let's run this full program. This is your very first object-oriented program. Let's try to run it. Okay, can you see your output? Do you see now? What is our output? Our output is, of course, through the system that out the print line. Right? So we have the assigned value. What was our assigned value? It's 36123. And then we have sign up al-alawi. 8.5. Yes, 4.5 plus 4 is total mark 8.5. Okay? Any question? Let's try to prove that this is actually working. Let me put here Jahad. Okay, so I have Jahad al-Alawi. And then run it. There you go. See? Jahad al-Alawi is changing. Now let's try to prove that this is really working. I'll put 5 in here. All right, so I have 5.5. So 5.5 and 4.5, your total mark should be 10. Let's run that. See, total mark is now equal to 10. Okay, any question, class? Any question? Any question on this?
No.
Okay, you want to try? You want to try? Okay, now I can show you the PowerPoint presentation, which is also the same as this one. Let me show you. Okay, what we have here is the class. Okay, and then class name. We have like 4 different attributes. We have ID and the student name. And then we have marks for Java and SQL. Okay. In our example, we had lab marks and quiz mark. This is marks already of 2 courses. So we have set the values. So we have 2 methods here. So it's just set and display, no? Okay, so we have here our fields and we have 2 methods. What are the 2 methods given in this example? We have set values and display the values. So this is simpler. The other one we have given in our example have calculation also. For this example, we just have what? Declaration and then displaying. Okay, assign values and display the values. Now, how do we create the controlling class? Same as I have shown you. So it should be inside the main program. Okay, we have we have here the object declaration. We have the call of method. So this is creating the object. Class name is student. Okay, S1 is the object name equal to new, same class name. The one you're putting here should be same here. But please do not forget the parentheses. How do you call this to? This is calling the method. What are the 2 methods included in this program? The 2 methods included in these programs are set values and display. So to call, we're going to use the syntax. Object name. Okay, so S1 dot set value. So same thing as you have in your next next methods. So you have, okay, so you have this as your object declaration and then calling the method. So that's all for this PowerPoint presentation. So let's just have this one. Okay, so this is already with argument. I will discuss this later on. Any question, class? You can now try this program. Which program you want? Okay, I think this one is simpler. Okay, so if you want to include the calculation, no problem with me. But as of now, you can have this example. This is only input and output. Where is that? Okay, let me have this. This one is simpler for you. All right, I will print screen this so that you can try with animations. Okay. Okay, I will print screen, huh? And then keep it in Moodle or here.